Take the exit. Turn right into the drive-thru.
Nope, I'm making dinner tonight.
You don't have time. Josh has practice.
Oh, that's right. I'll just get a salad.
And fries?
No, just the salad.
But salad cancels fries.
Salad only.
Fries.
Salad.
Fries.
Food noise isn't fair, but Mochi Health is. The affordable GLP-1 source that puts you on the road to successful weight loss.
Hey, can I get the...
Fries.
Salad. Sorry.
Learn more at joinmochi.com. Mochi members have access to licensed physicians and nutritionists. Results may vary.
All right, so we're back, Partners in True Crime, and we're here with one of our favorite guests and colleagues, I think we can call her now, since we've worked with her on the Alcatraz project. But she's got a book that is out, perfect timing for CrimeCon, and the title is Swans Don't Swim in the Sewer, Solving the Cold Case of the Flint River Killer's Daughter. Sheryl Mccollum, thanks for coming on with us.
Absolutely. I'm thrilled to talk to y'all. Not just about the book, about anything.
I know.
I know, but the book is so great. So I'm going to say I got to read the book before it was published. And I loved it. It was really interesting because the story itself is so crazy and you can't believe like how these two worlds intersected. Like, how does a serial killer end up being the victim of an unsolved murder of his own child? Like, how does that even happen? So why don't
it's wild.
I don't even understand. Like, but there's a thing called karma. So when I was reading your book, that's all I kept thinking. It's like, we do things, it's a ripple effect. You do something and then you don't know what the consequences of that are going to be in the moment. And later on, this was a perfect example of that. That's what I think was really gripping about it, because this guy committed multiple murders, got away with it, and then his daughter goes missing.
Yeah. So just for our audience purpose, just give us a log line on how this story would describe to you and how you dove into it, just so people understand give them a little tease.
Sure. Well, the way I got involved, I am literally on stage giving a speech, and it's a black tie event. And out of my peripheral, I see this woman walk in, and she's wearing Bermuda shorts, a tank top, and a straw hat. And I'm like, well, she don't belong. I mean, it's unusual. So as I watch her, I can tell she's holding an 8x10 frame. So I figure she's got to be a mama of a missing or murdered child. So when I'm done, I walk up to her. She turns the frame around and she said, "This is my daughter, Melissa. She was beheaded in Atlanta. Will you help me?" Well, I mean, there ain't no way to say no to that. Well, so I told her, of course, we'll help you, but it's not really conducive for me to talk to you right now. Can you come to my office next week? Which she did. And she walks in with this binder. Now, between that Saturday and the Wednesday she came to my office, y'all, I am racking my brain of a 21-year-old Caucasian female that was beheaded. I cannot think of the case. And so I start asking a couple of buddies. They don't know what I'm talking about. And I'm like, how has this case gone under the radar? Why do I not know it? Well, when she came to the office, she had that binder. Well, I instinctively reached for it because y'all know me. I want to get in that thing.
Yeah.
And she put her hands on it. And she said, "I know you've already offered to help me, but I've got to tell you something first." And I said, "Okay." She said, "My husband is in prison for murder, and I helped him."
What do you even think at that moment, Cheryl? Like, what's going through your mind right now?
Well, I mean, almost
shocking.
It's popping because my whole career, people lie to me. So this woman is not only being pretty upfront and forthright with it. I'm like, she helped him. Like, in what way? Like, I've got to know more. And I got to know why he's in prison and exactly what she did and he did. My mind is just in a bunch of different directions, but y'all know me. I tend to use humor. So in that moment, I used humor. And I just said to her, "Well, remind me not to make you mad." Y'all are going around killing people.
That's what's so great. Let me just say one thing. That's what I loved about this book. It's because it sounds like you. So if you want to know what Cheryl's like, read this book, because I'm telling you, it's her voice throughout. And that's what captivated me as I was reading it.
But you know, another thing, Cindy, that I really won't put out there, people don't realize, you know, the friendships and the help for you to take that book before it was published and say, okay, I'm going to read through it. I'll make maybe some suggestions, changes, you know, help you. You know, it's a huge benefit for somebody like me. I'm not a writer. I've never been to a writer's workshop. I'm not an author by trade. That is not what I do. I don't even speak English correctly. I sure, Lord, don't write it correctly. So again, having a sounding board like you, somebody that I trust to look through it before it's in print. I mean, I can't thank you enough for that. So
you're welcome. It was an honor to read it. It's an amazing story. And like I said, your voice, your personality is all through it. And I think that's what's going to get people really interested in.
Yeah. And you don't have to strong arm her to read a book, especially from you. I mean, she's got books all over the place. I got books coming out the yin yang here. So it's like, as soon as she got it, she was like,
again, very gracious either way. Because you know what I mean? You're about to put something out there for God and country, and you don't know if it's any good. Because again, to your point, I didn't know how to write it. So I just wrote it as if I was telling somebody at a bar, you know?
Yeah. And that's how it comes off. And I think that's why it's going to be accessible to people. Because it's an intricate case. So she tells you, she drops a bomb on you. Norma drops a bomb on you and says, okay, my husband is in jail for murdering a bunch of people and I helped him. Now we did the Green River Killer. Okay. And I've spoken to the wives, I've spoken to the family, you know, and not one person knew or helped, right? So,
or so they say,
which has always been suspicious to me, because if it's your husband, and you're close, you know what he's doing, right? So the fact that she was that honest with you, I can imagine that really like hit you over the head, like, okay, I can deal with this person. She's being straight with me.
That's right. That's exactly how I felt. And so I started asking her questions. I said, tell me about his crimes. So she started talking. And as she would say certain facts and certain scenarios, I'm like, now that's familiar to me. How do I know his crimes and not the crime against your daughter? Like, it was strange. But the more she talked, things were familiar. So finally, it hit me. And I said, wait a minute. Are you telling me your husband is the Flint River Killer? And she said, yes, but he hates that nickname. He might hate it, but he earned it. You know what I mean? So I said to her, this is crazy, because those cases happened in the 70s. Tell me now about your daughter. I said, but before we go any further, I'm going to ask you straight out, did your husband kill her? Because I'm going to be asked that. So let's go ahead and start, you know, tackling that. And we had a great discussion about that. And that's in the book, you know, but it's something I had to, you know, get off the table, I thought, pretty quick. And then the way she started to describe Melissa's case, the first thing that happened, there was a skull, a single skull, only bone found in the middle of Avon Avenue. It was sent off to get identified, and it was misidentified as a Caucasian male. So that's why I never heard the case. We didn't know we had a Caucasian female beheaded.
Well, and also this was in 1999,
correct,
I believe, when the skull was
correct.
found. Now, we did another case down in Florida where a skull was found. They couldn't figure out if they thought it was a child, it was a woman. But again, when you're dealing with that kind of stuff, with DNA wasn't really used that much in 1999. So it's not unheard of that would have happened. So I don't really, I just want to make sure, like, I don't want people blaming the police, like,
no,
you know what I mean? But I think that was kind of normal back then, that like DNA wasn't used.
They were collecting it, but they really weren't able to use it as an identifying thing yet, up until like, I think 2001. In fact, Gary Ridgway was like one of the first that was identified by DNA from swabs years earlier.
We weren't using it at all.
Right. So
and we thought, I mean, you know, again, everybody thought they knew what they had. Well, that was April. Well, then in June, 4 more trash bags were found. Each contained an arm or a leg. The torso was never found. But again, they took the new bones, put it with the skull on the shelf. That was it. They thought they knew. Well, then we get a call from Twiggs County that says, hey, we got a guy down here in the ravine with no head. It could be your guy. They go down there. Our skull was cut off clean, like a circular saw. Their person, it was real jagged, like somebody kind of had to work at it a little bit. So it wasn't a match. We didn't even have to do DNA. I mean, they knew not the same event. So they were trying, but again, we had no missing reported Caucasian males. We had no other bodies with no heads anywhere. We had nobody even from surrounding states reporting anybody missing. So it was stalled. I mean, we didn't know who the person was, if they were transient, if the head was brought down here by itself for the first 4 months until the, arms and legs were found. So that's why we didn't even have a missing person, because when Melissa's mom tried to report her missing, they told her, look, she's 21, she's married, her husband hasn't reported her missing. If she doesn't want to talk to you, she doesn't have to talk to you. There's no evidence that a crime has been committed. She goes to her home police department begging them, please, something's not right. She hasn't gotten a hold of us. She hasn't, she missed Christmas. She missed Mother's Day. She missed my birthday. They told her the same thing Atlanta did. She's grown. She can run away. It's legal for her. So there was no missing persons report. So again, that's why the Atlanta Police Department, the Henry County Police Department, DeKalb County, everybody, we didn't even have a missing person, much less a homicide to investigate. So that's why I never heard of it.
Well, also, I mean, this sounds very much like Lenine Rogers' case as well, where they tried to file a missing persons report and they said, well, your husband has to do it, or she could have just run away. And I think it's interesting that Chris was saying that Melissa ran off to California, but she left her phone, she left her keys, she left her car, she left her kids. Like, what woman's going to go off to California and just leave everything? Right. So
this was a woman who was poor. And I don't say that to be rude. I say that because the victimology matters. Facts matter. And I'm telling you, she didn't have 50 cents to go anywhere. And so when he says, well, she left to go to California to start a fake ID business because nobody in Atlanta needs a fake ID. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. She didn't have a computer. She didn't have a way to laminate anything. What business are you talking about? She never ran a criminal enterprise of any kind. So again, why would he talk about the victim in this way, this person that is missing? And how did she get there? She didn't have money. She would have had to hitchhike. And then once she got there, she had no money. So none of that made any sense. And like you said, she had a 1 and 2 year old. Every single person in her life said how much she loved her children. She would not have left them. So there were a lot of red flags, from Jump Street on this thing.
Jump Street. Taking Lenny's verbiage.
Inside joke.
Inside joke. Sorry. You guys will hear about it August 6th when Alcatraz airs.
I love that man. We're going to go down range.
He's the best. All right. So let's rewind back for a second. You get involved because Norma comes to a wine and crime event holding a picture of her daughter, desperate to get answers. Her husband's in prison for murdering multiple people. So let's talk about that first. The Flint River murders. I mean, growing up on the river in Atlanta, it's like when you're a kid, you go in the river, everybody's going in the river. Didn't know it was a dumping ground for bodies and everything else that was happening. So what did Carl Patton go to prison for?
He went to prison because he murdered 5 people. And when he was caught 25 years later, he admitted to it. Norma turned state's evidence, testified against him. So they kind of had that worked out before, that if the police ever show up, now this is in the early days, but 74, 75, if they ever show up, you take a plea and stay out of prison so you can finish raising the girls. So that's what their deal was all along. That's what they did at the end of it. He walked into several different jurisdictions. It was DeKalb and Henry and Fayette and Clayton, and testified to what he did. He admitted it. There was no trial, and the reason there were different jurisdictions, two of the bodies that he, put in the Flint, they drifted at different intervals and wound up in two different counties.
Got it.
Bodies. And then he thought, man, if I keep putting people in the Flint, they're going to figure it out. So he put two bodies in the Nantahala, and then one victim he put on railroad tracks.
So wait a minute. It's just the wife, was her name Norma?
Yes.
Norma.
She was basically complicit in the killings, and she knew about them in the 70s, correct?
She knew about two of them, and those are the two that she helped him with. She helped him dispose of their bodies in the river.
Okay. So, and it's the same woman who approached you?
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
So she's...
But she got
this
probation.
is the crazy part.
I mean, she didn't go to prison. She got probation for helping.
That's
and
right.
she got a fine, I think, maybe. I don't know.
And a lot of people had trouble with that. They did not understand why she got that kind of deal.
Yeah. I mean, I'm having a problem with it now. I mean, it sounds very similar to the whole Charles Ng Cricket, Leonard Lake ex-wife who, walked away and when they were doing all this stuff in her house and she knew about it and she was complicit as well. So that's, I mean, granted, you go for the bigger win and something like that. You go for the killer, but still you have this person now years later showing up at a wine and crime, basically looking for your help. I mean, it's pretty bizarre.
Well, here's what's really strange. So their daughter, Tina, worked at a diner, and one of my good friends from high school would go there just about every day. And, she and Tina became acquaintances. You know how you do. You see somebody every single day. And one day she noticed Tina was kind of sad. And she said, "What's going on? You're usually so happy-go-lucky." And she said, "Well, my sister was murdered years ago, and this is the anniversary, and it's just a tough day." And she said, "What?" And so Tina told her a little bit of the story. She said, "Well, you've got to meet my friend from high school. She works on cold cases." Well, then Tina goes and tells Norma. Norma runs everything by Carl. So even though Carl's been in prison, he still is the head of the family. So she goes and tells him, and he goes, "Okay, you go and show up at whatever event she's at next. Just show up, like bum rush her. It'll be harder for her to say no." And in that regard, he was right. So Carl is the one that actually, set up how we were going to meet and how this was going to go down.
Well, I also thought it was really interesting. Carl is coined a serial killer, but he was involved in hits on people. It wasn't like he was preying on, look, this doesn't excuse murder on any, level, but he was maybe part of the Dixie Mafia, potentially. I don't know. There's rumors about that with this whole
rumors.
We'll get into that in a second. But so he was involved in insurance hits on multiple people.
The very first person he killed, Richard Jackson, he did it for the insurance money, for a cut of it through his aunt. Mm-hmm. No doubt. And then the next person he killed was his uncle that his aunt was married to, that he beat her. So that's when Carl started to see himself differently. He is one of those people that always said, if anybody hurts any member of my family, I'll kill them. Well, I know a lot of men that say that. Mm-hmm. I mean, I have family members that say, if anybody hurts any of y'all or touches a hair on your head, I'll kill them. But Carl meant it. Carl did it. And so that's kind of where this reign started from, even though it might have been short-lived. What he did, he did. And I try to be very clear in the book, Carl Patton was where he belonged, in prison. There's Absolutely. No doubt about that. The True. Difference in Carl and other killers, Carl did not see himself as a serial killer, even though that's the way the FBI and Department of Corrections categorized him. One of the first letters I ever got from him, he said, "I'm no Ted Bundy." That was the sentence. Because he thought those folks that are predators that go out and search for people, he felt they were very different than him. Carl felt like most of the people he killed had it coming, is what Carl thought. Now, there was collateral damage, unfortunately. Liddy Evans specifically was a completely innocent person. She was with the wrong man to stay safe, but when Carl killed, Joe Cleveland, Liddy was his girlfriend. Well, she was going to be able to tell. So Carl felt like he had to kill her too.
Yeah. No, I can see how it's like his ego is allowing him to declassify himself as a serial killer, because
Right.
it's almost like he had a goal. It was a financial goal. He was taking people out, whereas, your standard serial killer like BTK, I mean, they're doing it for just the thrill of it and the psychopathy and stuff like that. So he kind of distinguished himself. But interesting guy.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well,
how often?
Great part, and I know y'all work with a serial killer expert a lot. She is tremendous. But what I was able to get in this particular case from Carl, I've never had somebody that could give me victimology and suspectology, and he was able to do that. So not only was he able to tell me what Melissa was like as a child, what she was like as a young adult, what she was like as a mother, he was able to tell me what this type of killer was like and how it differed from him. And not just, this is an expert with the FBI that could tell me. This is somebody that is a killer that could tell me. So I thought that's going to be invaluable, especially when I talk to other experts to say, hey, when we're putting this plan together of how we're going to try to solve this thing, these are some elements we cannot ignore. So
let's walk through how you started this investigation and the steps that you took, because it's really interesting with the team that you put together and then what you guys did. And I think him being and I want to talk about the suspectology, because I think that that's really interesting and it's something that most people don't really know what that means. So let's just start with the first step that you took after meeting Norma, learning about the past and understanding that there is a missing girl and that there's a severed head somewhere, a skull that was found.
Right. I had to understand the victimology. Who was she? I know her parents, but who was she? Was she involved in crime at all? Was she somebody that brought danger? Was she a drug addict? Was she a prostitute? Tell me everything about her. Well, she wasn't a drug addict. She wasn't a prostitute. She married her high school sweetheart. She had 2 young children, 1 and 2. She worked occasionally, not a lot. She rarely had a car. She never had a phone, hardly. If they had the phone, turned on for a little bit, normally it got cut off because they didn't pay. She never had a cell phone. So she couldn't always keep up with her family. So their dynamic was not like, for example, when my sisters went to college, they called every Sunday, and they called on Sundays because long distance was cheaper on Sunday. This is in the 70s.
Yeah.
Well, that was the pattern. Well, if we hadn't heard from them on one Sunday, then the entire world would change, right? But for this family, not hearing from Melissa was not unusual because she didn't have a phone. She lived in Atlanta. Her family lived in Henry County, which is about a solid hour drive. There's no public transportation there. She can't get there. So they would go months with no communication. So it wasn't unusual in the beginning when Thanksgiving rolled by and Christmas, and they thought, well, maybe they're at his parents for Christmas, or maybe they're out of town, or who knows, what's going on with them. Maybe the babies are sick. Well, then it was, Mother's Day and her mom's birthday. Well, that's when the panic starts to kind of really reach in, and nobody would take a report. So a lot of time was lost in the beginning that nobody in law enforcement even knew Melissa Wolfenbarger was missing.
Yeah. Well, that sounds pretty much on par with a lot of these mysteries that happens usually in the beginning when there's family members reaching out to law enforcement, says, well, has it been 72 hours? I mean, they'll probably come back. And I don't even know what it was like back then, if they waited that long.
Well, I think there was also a lot of people that knew her dad and his background. So there might not have been the urgency that there might have been with somebody else. But, one of the first things we decided to do is, once we got the victimology done and we kind of had a plan of action, I wanted to give the Atlanta Police Department something they didn't have, something that had never been done on this case. So one of the first things I did was a geographical profile with Douglas McGregor in Canada. And he was gracious enough to jump in and work that up and work that out so that I could give them something new. It may not break the case, but at least you have something that you've never seen before, which I thought was important.
Explain what a geographical profile is, because I thought that was really interesting. That was one of my questions. What
Okay,
is that?
well, let's say you have a serial rapist or a serial bank robber, or just a homicide. If you pinpoint where the victim lived, where the body was found, where they were last seen, then these folks can pinpoint where the perpetrator possibly lives or works, where his activity grounds are. So in this case, Melissa lived, not far from where the skull was found. Her husband worked not 50 yards from where the skull was found. The junkyard was right across the street. The skull was in the middle of the road, but we know that was probably drugged there by a canine or a coyote. So you look at the whole area and you pinpoint, where is this person going to be active? Where are they comfortable? And you do almost like a triangle, and you see, well, it's possible they work in this area, possibly they live in this area. And then it shrinks your suspect pool, hopefully. And it, should shrink where you're looking. Who did she run into? Whose path did she cross? Had she had an affair? Did anybody threaten her? Again, let's say you have somebody that does have a drug dealer or does have somebody they're having an affair with. Those two people, if you're looking at them, are they anywhere in, this hot zone?
Yeah.
And so what did he come up with? What was his analysis of that?
He basically, said that you've got to look at the husband.
Because
But here's what's crazy: whenever you have a woman that's been murdered, you're going to look at the husband anyway. I mean, that's 101 stuff. Well, what happened here? Once we started looking at her husband, we're like, okay, well, he thought she went to California, so of course he ain't looking for her. But at one point, her mom and dad go to his family like, have y'all seen her? She has showed up at nothing, and now we're at a year. Now we're at 2 years. Now we're at 3 years. He never showed any cause or concern, never went to law enforcement, never tried to find her in any way. He knew she never tried to find the children, never tried to visit with them. Well, he knows that ain't right. She wouldn't just go away forever. When he found out, when the skull was identified, that in fact she had not left him, that she had been murdered, and murdered in such a horrific way, he still did nothing. He didn't go to law enforcement. He didn't go to her family. He didn't even go and explain to the children, hey, your mama never left you. She never abandoned you. He never cleared that up. So a lot of the, pre and post behavior, you have to look at that.
Sure. And that's really surprising. But once again, you feel like you said earlier, is that the local law enforcement weren't really hyped on trying to find what's going on because of the family background.
Well, at this point, Atlanta now has a homicide case because her skull has been identified. And I will tell you, Detective Calhoun, y'all, let me tell you something. He is one of the most loving, kind-hearted, leads with his heart in all things. So one of the first things he did when the skull was identified, he thought, father to father, I know what Carl Patton did. I know who he is, but he doesn't deserve to hear that on the news. So he drove to that prison to tell him in person that Melissa had actually been murdered, beheaded, dismembered, and now identified. And I thought, just as a human being, that was an extraordinary event for me.
Did he describe to you at all about his interaction with it? Because here it's kind of a unique perspective for a homicide detective to go tell a convicted killer of multiple people that his daughter was murdered by a potential, brutally. That's got to be a weird kind of conversation. Usually when they're doing these victim, declarations to the family, it's like, it's very, it's like, it's not like that. The victim's family is completely an innocent person. So it's like putting two hats on back and forth. It's like very strange.
Well, I think for all of us, we put it in this category. The sins of the father are not Melissa's fault. Melissa did nothing to deserve what happened to her. And so we know who we're working for. We're working for Melissa. Do we need to deal with her parents? Yes. And at some point, as a parent, you can't even fathom. And again, Carl Patton did some unforgivable things. He shot people. But when you think of a young mom, 21, chopped up in pieces and thrown in a junkyard, there's just a different level there than, hey, here's this guy that's in the criminal world and he's done some really horrible things and, hey, he got shot. And again, I'm not making light of any of it. I mean, I spent a lot of time talking to the children of Lydia Evans. And let me tell you, I think it's one of the single most just impactful conversations I've ever had. There's 4 of them, 3 girls and a boy, and they lost their mama, who was fun. She was the life of the party, literally. She loved them. She was active and vivacious and adventurous, all the things. So when she was murdered, their lives took such a detour in darkness and just sadness. They're not out of it yet, but they are all decent and kind and loving people, but have had demons to fight because of what happened. They couldn't sleep at night. They were afraid all the time as children. Well, what does that do to you, right? But when I talked to them, I thought, man, they are going to tell me, how in the world could you deal with that devil? Why in the world do you care? You know, I thought they were going to be the ones driving that karma train, you know. But here's what I got. I got Carl Patton is the devil. But what happened to Melissa is not okay. And somebody should answer for it. And there should be justice for her. And I was like, what now? You know, because a lot of people, you know how they say, F you and the horse you rode in on.
Yep.
If I don't care about you, I don't care about your mama. I don't care about your granny. I don't care about your child. Like, but they didn't do that. They were able to separate the man that murdered our mama. His child deserves justice. And I thought, well, if there ain't no other reason to be involved in this thing, it's so I could be associated with people that were that extraordinary.
Well, that totally hit me when I read that in the book, because I thought to myself, my gosh, would I be able to do that if someone had murdered my mother? Like, that is really says something about the characters of those kids.
It does.
But going back to fate in this karmic tie to this whole story, you know, Carl didn't get arrested for almost 25 years after he committed these murders. And Liddy was in the 70s. She was murdered in the 70s. So he gets arrested, what, in the 90s sometime?
2004,
2004. Okay. So he gets arrested 2004. And when they put him in the system, that's when the DNA comes up and matches this skull that's been unidentified for 4 or 5 years.
No. So here's what happened. There was a detective in Fayette, and one of the victims floated into Fayette. He was reading the case file from Clayton County, and Clayton County said they recovered a bloody pillow.
I wrote a little song to remind you, Choice Hotels get you more of the experiences you value. The Cambria Hotel's got it all. A rooftop bar, have a ball. Cocktails up here feel just right. Is Cambria amazing? All right. Bring a date, your team, or even your mom. Book direct at choicehotels.com. See you on the roof.
This detective read about DNA, and he called them and said, hey, you still got that pillow? They said, yeah. And he said, let's test it. And that came back to match Lydia Evans. And at that point,
that's what I'm
he
saying.
arrested Carl Patton.
Right. He arrested Carl Patton. That's right. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that when Carl was arrested and his DNA went into the system, that's how they were able to identify Melissa.
Yes, I'm sorry. In 2003. Yes. I'm so
2003.
sorry.
That
I misunderstood what you were asking. Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry. So I thought that was really interesting, right? So Carl gets arrested because this detective finds this bloody pillow. They do DNA evidence and they connect it to Liddy, the 4 children that told you he was the devil.
Right.
Melissa needs justice. Then when Carl is arrested, he goes into the system and now his DNA matches this unidentified skull.
Right.
So now they know that it's Melissa.
Right. But they also, at the same time, everything was almost simultaneous. They cross-checked the unidentified skull with dental records because that same detective in Fayette said, hey, don't you think this skull right across the street from where her husband works might be her and not some unidentified man? So that was all happening at the same time. So they not only had the DNA, they also had dental records that identified her.
It's just like this cross, the timing of this. And then, okay, so now
Crazy.
you're involved. You're putting together this amazing team of people. You know, you have Karen Greer, you have Trace, you have this gentleman in Canada who did the geographical forensics on this. So tell me about that. So when you get involved now, what's happening and what do you guys do?
So, you know, I get everybody together, and what typically happens is every expert works independent, and that's on purpose, so that when they come back to me and they say, hey, I think Mr. X did it, if everybody says Mr. X, honey, I'll put my reputation on it. If I've got 4 or 5 different suspects, we got to go back to work. Now we got to get in the same room. We got to talk it out. How are we seeing this so different? So that's kind of how it started. So, you know, I had Douglas working, I had Trace working, I had Dr. Dwayne Thompson working. I had, Susan Hendricks helped. Like all these people are helping. Nancy Grace helped. And I want people to understand this ain't name dropping. This happened. And all these people are saying, what can I do? How can I help? Again, aside from who her daddy is. And I think that speaks to all these people as well. They know that what happened to Melissa was not her own doing. She didn't do anything to put herself in a nefarious position where, again, a drug dealer or, you know, a pimp or anybody like that was working her, or she wasn't involved in the mob. It was nothing like that. This was a young 21-year-old girl that occasionally worked part-time at Waffle House and was trying to raise 2 babies.
And such a horrific way that she was murdered.
Horrific. Yep.
And that's this thing going back to this Dixie Mafia. Can you explain what that is? I'm from New York, I know, and my father's from Sicily. I know the real mafia, but I don't know anything about the Dixie Mafia.
Okay. So the Sicilian Mafia, you know, they have a Don, and then they have their brackets, and they have their organization, and everybody answers to one person. The Dixie Mafia, we work a little different. You're almost like an independent contractor. You're your own thing. So Cindy, let's say you steal cars, and Rob has counterfeit money. That's what he does. And I run guns. So I'm going to take some of Rob's money, and he's going to give it to me so that I can con a whole bunch of people and buy a whole bunch of guns. And then I'm going to use one of your stolen cars to go to Chicago to sell these guns. And then when I come back, I'm going to give y'all a third of the profits. So I'm using your car. You're your own individual crime enterprise. So is Rob. So am I. But we are a part of a bigger network. And that network is the Dixie Mafia. And that's the easiest way to explain it. So if you are running illegal gambling, you can be a part of them. If you've got guns, or you're running prostitution rings, or you're running dope, you can all be a part of the Dixie Mafia, so that, you know, I can call Cindy for a car. That's a safe spot. Rob, I can call him for a wad of money. That's a safe spot. They know they can call me for a gun that can't be traced. It's a safe spot. So we're all connected in this criminal organization, but I don't answer to anybody. Rob can't tell me what to do, and you can't tell me what to do.
It's interesting too, because like if one of us got caught, then the other 2 people are not really going to be on the spotlight.
Right. And, you know, there's that code of silence thing, you know, it rarely happens, you know, because they know what's going to happen if you ask, you know.
So Carl's in prison. You start talking to him. Tell me about how that all started?
So the first thing I did was I told Norma, I said, listen, you know, mamas and daddies are different. They see the children different. They see the marriage different. Their part running the house is different. So I've heard from you. I got it. I've heard from Tina. I got it. I got to talk to Carl. And so the Department of Corrections, I sent the request. Can I please go meet with him? They refused to let me meet with him. And so I said, all right. So I wrote him a letter. And I said, you know, they're not going to let me come visit. So this is the way we got to do it. So we went completely old school and started writing letters. Carl has since died, so I can tell this part. I never told it before that, but I didn't want him to get in trouble, because if he got in trouble, that would stop this from being able to happen. But occasionally he could also procure a phone. So we got to have long conversations occasionally, because, you know, if you write an inmate, I mean, that could take 2 weeks for them to get the letter. It may take Carl a couple of weeks to finish what he wants to say, and then 2 weeks or so for me to get it. So you're talking about months can go by, you know, and I'm just trying to get the answer to one question. So we wrote letters for, you know, several years and talked on the phone when we could. And that's how I got the information from him.
And so what did he tell you about the suspectology regarding Chris?
He told me straight up it was her husband. He told me they had a volatile marriage. He said Christopher had put his hands on Melissa. At one point, he beat her pretty good. At one point, Carl even beat Christopher up. And I know people are wanting to know, well, don't you think, you know, Carl would have killed Christopher? I do. And I asked him straight up. But I think you ought to read that part in the book, because it's too funny. It's too, if you knew Carl in any way, Carl was several things. Carl was a very violent man. He was also extremely loyal to his family, and he could be very funny. So this is one of those that in one sentence, he's all three.
Yeah. Yeah, it is good. You got to read it in the book. It's great.
Yeah, it's too good.
So I thought it was interesting too that when Norma and Carl ran into, before Carl was arrested, they ran into Chris's family, his sister, and she just burst into tears. And I was like, well, isn't that a sign right there that she knows something or something's off? And his mother got custody of their children. Why?
Well, that happened before Melissa went missing. So Christopher had an open domestic violence charge. And we believe that if he had gone to prison or jail for an extended period of time, there would be no money. And Melissa wanted to be sure the children could eat and had a roof over their head. So if she had to move out and kind of, you know, live on the street, she didn't want that for the children. So she and Christopher willingly gave his mother custody. Now, where it gets a little odd is after she was murdered, Christopher told the children he was their brother and let his mother raise them as their mother. And that's what they believed for years and years and years.
Yeah.
That part was very strange.
It happens, though.
The whole thing is strange. Nobody wins in this thing. The whole story is sad. You know, most of these folks never had a shot at, you know, a normal, happy life. They just didn't.
No, it's terrible. It's very tragic.
It's terrible. And for her children, I mean, they lost their mother to murder. Most people believe their father did it. Their grandmother lied to them their whole life. I mean, it's like their other grandmother is a killer. Their other grandfather's
grandfather.
I mean, I don't know what you do with that, because you sure don't stand a chance. You know,
that's it's a tragic pedigree to bear.
It is. And I think I feel for them as much as Melissa in this whole thing, because they're left here to deal with all of it.
Oh,
how old are they now?
They're in their 20s now.
Yeah.
Almost 30, I guess.
Wow.
So in the investigation, when you first got involved, you put together this team, and then you sent, you know, Trace out there looking for stuff.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that.
We'll also explain. I mean, not everybody know who Trace
sorry,
is. So,
yeah.
and maybe just, I mean,
Sure.
you talked about the guy doing the geo survey or whatever like that. To talk about what everybody brought to the team, what their specialty was. I think that was interesting.
So Trace Sargent is a canine handler, and she's got cadaver dogs. And I have been able to work with her. Ironically, I worked a Dixie Mafia case with her. I've worked missing person cases. I've worked serial killer cases with her. So Trace and I have known each other for a long, long time. And she's just extraordinary. And her dogs are just second to none. So I called her because the torso had never been found. Neither had the circular saw that we believe was used. So I said, if you could come out and just run where the junkyard used to be and the wood line, maybe we'll get lucky. I mean, who knows? So if you know Trace at all, I mean, she's in the truck. She's coming. She doesn't want anything, doesn't need anything. And, she gets out there. And I tell people, because I've had the news media show up before on our scenes. And I'm like, if y'all want to follow her, that's great. But I'm telling you, she will disappear. If that dog is going, she's going. And so there was this huge just wall of kudzu that went up this embankment. And then on the other side, just because I'd been there, you go way down this like 45-degree angle and there's railroad tracks. When I tell you that dog hit that kudzu and Trace just evaporated. I mean, she was gone. And so they were in the woods for probably a solid 45 minutes. We did not have any success that day. Now, both dogs hit, but we couldn't locate anything. So there was human remains there somewhere, somehow. And then Dr. Dwayne Thompson, in his area is weapons. He had his metal detector and all that, and he was looking for the saw with the metal detector in concert with the dogs. So that was a wonderful thing to watch. Again, we didn't recover it, but that's what they did on that scene that day. And then Karen Greer was also there, who's an anchor with WSB, Channel 2 News. And part of her expertise, obviously, is to use media with cold cases and get these stories out so that if there's anybody that had any information, they would come forward. And we did the same thing with the podcast Zone 7. And we actually had somebody that, contacted us that said, hey, I know them from back in the day. And I can tell you, that what happened at a party, so that was also.
That's interesting because the podcast actually was where you started getting tips that actually made sense. Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit about how that started and who that person was and how that led to.
Yeah. I just got an instant message on Facebook and the person asked me if I was still working on Melissa's case. And I said, yes. And she said, not Melissa, but his next girlfriend. They were at a party together and his treatment of her is what alerted her because, Christopher looked very aggressive to her and said something that this young lady didn't even know had ever happened. And didn't even know he was married before. So, she felt very uncomfortable with him for the rest of that friendship. Her husband at the time and Christopher were friends. So they were at the same party.
And then.
That's wild.
That led to the grand jury, didn't it? Didn't that?
Yes. I mean, in that order, the Atlanta Police Department put together a solid circumstantial case. That's all we had. And it was, I thought I don't know how you could look at it and have a whole lot of questions, especially to get through a grand jury. And they were able to get through grand jury for sure.
But tell us what happened then.
It goes.
when I finished the book, I was really sad.
Yeah. So there was a couple of things that were shocking to me. One was after the arrest and we get a trial date, I get a subpoena. I was expecting a subpoena from the state, but I got a subpoena from the defense.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what? And I thought, please don't tell me, this is going to be some stunt, right? Well, they never called me. And I think that was on purpose. But, you know, the state didn't call me. They didn't call Sheila Ross. They didn't call Vince Velasquez. They didn't call, you know, a real expert in domestic murder. I think they missed the boat by not calling some of the people that I think could have at least filled in some gaps for people. But what the defense did, the prosecution obviously called her mother. Well, they went after Norma as somebody that helped her husband dispose of bodies that he murdered. They brought Carl up repeatedly. They brought me up repeatedly. They brought the podcast up repeatedly. Then they went after her sister. And again, you can imagine what her life has been like. It has not been easy. It has not been perfect. They put a spotlight on that. And I just think the jury could not get past the sins of the father. But the book, I mean, it has a lot more in it, y'all.
Yep.
And if you read through it, one thing that, you know, I want you to get from it is now it's in the court of public opinion.
Yeah.
You read it. You tell me what you think. I mean, it's not like he had an alibi.
No.
It's not like he ever once said he didn't do it. It's not like he ever took a polygraph. It's not like he ever helped law enforcement. So look at what all we have. And there's a lot more we haven't talked about that's in the book.
Oh, there's so much. There's so much in the book. We want to leave that to you guys to read it, because I think it's really important to understand how in depth they went on this investigation and how all of these unanswered questions just were ignored in that trial. It's outraging, to be honest. When I finished, I was sad and I was outraged. And I literally couldn't believe that he was found not guilty.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, it happens a lot. It's happening. You know, we have a couple cases right now that it's happening very similar. And they're not killers associated with the victim's family. So sometimes it's just the court system. It's just how, juries, I mean, you never know how they're going to go. It's like, they say, you go to a jury trial, it's 50-50.
Sure.
You never know. You never know. So it doesn't mean that that person is innocent. It just means that they're just not going to spend time in bars for now. And sounds like, usually people like that who get, exonerated or whatever, not proven guilty at that point, usually something else happens to them, or they do something else that comes up that really kind of, hopefully karma will take its toll. So, and that's all you can hope and pray for in something like this. But it's sad when it happens. Like I said, I'm sure you've experienced it numerous times, I'm sure, in cases that you have. But, it's like a lot of times circumstantial evidence is, you can argue all that. You can, a good defense attorney is going to, really argue all that and create reasonable doubt.
100%. And frankly, Carl made it easy.
Mm-hmm.
He was an easy target.
Yeah.
I also think it's interesting about this case is the humanity behind it, because listen, no one should ever take a life. It is a horrific thing that is not excusable. And anyone who does deserves to be in prison, period. There is no doubt about that. I think the way that Liddy's children handled it, I think is testament to the human spirit of forgiveness. Agreed. I think the fact that you were able to speak to Carl and to listen to him without judging it because of the victim. You stayed with the victim. And I think that's the key here. This is about the victim. It's not about the killer father behind bars or the mother that was his accomplice. This is about a young girl who was brutally, brutally murdered and ripped away from her children. And I think for you, just reading the book, that was your path through to be able to sit and talk to Carl. I mean, tell me, how did that feel for you?
Well, I mean, again, I used to work for the Department of Corrections. I worked 8 years in the Rice Street Jail. I mean, my whole career. I mean, that's who I've dealt with. I mean, people that have committed horrible crimes, So that part wasn't that unfamiliar to me. Again, what was unfamiliar was what happened to him as a father.
Right.
That was really the part that I was like, okay, sometimes I got to talk to Carl because he's a killer. And sometimes I got to talk to Carl because he's a dad. And he's a dad that is suffering. And he's suffering in a lot of ways, not just the loss of his child, but he's trapped in this cage and can't do anything about it. So, you know, it was something that, I mean, I felt for him. You can't help but feel bad for him. And, you know, in several of the letters, and I included some of them in the book so that you can see this is what he said to me. And, you know, a lot of people said, oh, Mac, you know, prisoners are liars and con artists and all that. Sure. But after all these years, and he kept the same mantra about what he wanted and what he expected and what he thought the system should be doing. And then he was very honest with me, not just in his letters, but in the phone calls. I mean, he would just tell me over and over, like when I committed those crimes, I was a 25-year-old kid. He said I was an idiot. You know, so again, he came at this from different levels and different avenues that I think made the case more solid. It made it more 361. It wasn't just, hey, I talked to a couple of people here. We talked to everybody we could find that would talk to us. I tried to talk to Christopher. He wouldn't talk to me.
Yeah, that's where is he now?
I guess home.
Still in Georgia?
Yes.
What do you think
he found is Melissa's mother still?
Yeah. What do you think he's gonna? I mean, your book's out, and it's gonna be about. You're gonna be doing a lot of press about that. I mean, you're a local person there, and in Georgia. I mean, what do you think is? Do you think? I would imagine if I was local news, I would be knocking on his door.
I mean, the local news did a great job of covering it when the trial happened. Karen Greer was about the only one that covered it before. Everybody had forgot about her. They didn't know about her. But, you know, I think, again, court of public opinion, people are going to see it one way or the other. But I think it's important, again, just to say, hey, on these cases where you don't have DNA, you don't have a fingerprint, you don't have an eyewitness, there's still something you can do.
Oh, absolutely. And you have done it. And
Yeah.
you know, it's like, it's fascinating that the story is so fascinating on how it started with you and how you had to go really dig deep back into the history of like this family's, you know, tormented past with having a killer father and a mother who helped cover it up. And now they're on the other side of the coin, and you're sitting there and you're like this dividing line in between. You're like, all right, well, yeah, I understand his past and I understand what's going on here. He goes, but I'm still I'm fighting for the victim.
And that's what it's about, because y'all, at the bottom line, y'all have children. I have children. I do not want this person pumping gas next to my daughter or playing golf next to my son or at a restaurant next to y'all. Right. I don't want that. This person belongs in prison. I mean, anybody that could chop up another human being and throw them in a junkyard.
It's just unconscionable. You can't even imagine how you could do, especially just someone that's the mother of your children, if he is indeed guilty. I mean, that's the thing.
And again, the jury has spoken. He's not. He's not. But whoever this killer is, whoever this person is, they had to know her. I mean, it's not even a mile from her home and right across the street from where her husband works. That's intimate knowledge, whoever this person is. And I have said, people, you know, they say, hey, Mac, don't you think that somebody was getting back at Carl? They waited 25 years. No, I don't think that. And I don't think anybody was trying to set Christopher up. If they were setting Christopher up, why didn't they drop a dime and say, hey, there's a body over here. I can smell something over here. Y'all need to come check it out. None of that ever happened. I mean, that's, you know, and again, you can listen to the children of Lydia Evans. I mean, they're telling you they in no way would be out there trying to hurt anybody. They didn't even know Carl had children.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't even know it, and they wouldn't hurt anybody. They've never hurt anybody their whole adult life. So
Yeah, and that's a brutal return for the killing of their family members. I mean, it's pretty brutal. I mean, it's not like just
yeah.
one
But
thing
it's
and make.
one of those things, Rob. Think about it. If you're the children of one of his victims, there's just more murder. This is now second generation, third generation. I mean, when does this stop? I mean, it's just horrible.
Yeah. It's, to me, it just, when I used to read about all the Greek tragedies. It's like a very Greek tragedy. It's like this weird circular Greek tragedy.
Yeah.
Well, the karma. I mean, the karma is just incredible. I mean, when you were speaking to Carl, and we've spoken to serial killers now for the past 5 years, I don't ever feel like any of them have any remorse for anything they've ever done, except for one, Wayne Adam Ford. He's the only one that I ever thought actually was remorseful for what he did. Did you get the sense that Carl, after now experiencing the pain of losing his daughter, was regretful for what he did?
Yes. He even, on more than one occasion, gave me a message for the children of Lydia Evans. And he said, they probably won't accept it, but will you please try? And I said, I will tell them. I'll call and tell them. And I did.
Yeah. And what was their reaction?
Mixed. I mean, I think her son is never going to accept anything he has to say in any way.
Yeah.
I think the youngest daughter was at least appreciative. He said it out loud. That's better than not getting anything ever. And I told her, I said, he not only called me on a stolen phone to tell me, he put it in writing. I mean, I have the letter. So, I mean, on more than one occasion and more than one communication, he tried to make that clear that he had, and again, it's in the book, but he had no idea what he had done to these other families until Melissa was murdered. And then he knew what he had done, and he could hardly live with it.
Wow. And there was pretty big distance between time from when he killed them then Melissa. It's like crazy. It's like, that's interesting. Yeah.
So let's talk about the process a little bit, because I think this is your first book. It's very exciting. How do you feel about it now, seeing it in print on Amazon?
Well, I feel great about it. It's an unusual feeling because, I mean, y'all are friends of mine, but I'm a private person by nature. So to even have a few family stories out there is an unusual feeling for me. But I think now that it's done, you know, the Band-Aid's been ripped off, so to speak. I'm proud of it. I mean, I worked hard on it. I wanted to give acknowledgement to a lot of these people that did some things they didn't have to do. And I think that there's a lot of people that might be surprised that, you know, Nancy Gray still works cases, or Joe Jackalone will answer the phone for me, you know, and I think that they don't really realize there's a, you know, plethora of people that have a level of expertise that's second to none that will help just because it's the right thing to do. They don't want any money. They don't want any credit. They don't want an acknowledgement. But you know, I thought it was important for people.
It is important. And I love that part of it. I really do. I love the fact that you described each person and what they did. And I thought it was just such a great team that you put together. It reminded me of like Zone 7. Like, these are the people that you bring together. And that's what your, you know, 100%. Your expertise. And you know, I don't know this. I have to bring this person in. And that's what we love about you.
Yeah.
You know, that's what's so great about what
but
you do.
But y'all work the same way.
Yeah, well, you have to
go grab Trace. You'll go grab Marlene. You'll go grab Laura. And that, to me, that's the whole gig. And what it does for me, number one, I love and adore and respect all of y'all. So one, it's just fun to hang out and be together. But then on the other side, not only is this case going to be more legitimate, it's going to be more correct. It's going to have everything that I believe this case needs, is going to get. And I just have a mantra: every tool on every case, every time.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, and what I find is really interesting, because like, you've been doing this for years. We've been only doing it we've been doing it in a different level, you know, from the television standpoint and stuff. Like, we bring experts on and to help us like that. But just recently we've been, in the last 5 years, we've been kind of dovetailing what you've been doing with your zone 7 and stuff, and just because of like that. But it's definitely a different perspective when you're able to get the knowledge and go in and say, listen, this came up, who can we call? And like, we already know who we can call. I know how many times we've had conversations on the phone or text you got a second, you want to talk, want to run some by you like that, and like, okay, this is what Max said, this someone's, it's like, boom, check it off the list, stuff like that. And it just it's really, really helpful. And it just the force multiplier that we can create just by staying in contact, communicating. I mean, we're really excited to go to CrimeCon next week and meet all these amazing people. And we're hoping to create more force multipliers and just kind of expand the network, because everybody's doing stuff. Because the one thing that, I talk to law enforcement and, the alphabet agencies and stuff like that we encounter all stuff. And, they talk out of two sides of their mouth. They're like going, well, I can't tell you this. He goes, but if you want to look into that, I can't do it, but you can. And you can. He goes, because I'm limited. But if you happen to meet this person in that area and you ask this question, you might get something. And it's just those types of information. But unfortunately, that's how you have to skin these cats. Because there's so many. I mean, the law enforcement has such a high bar of parameters they have to jump through and all this stuff. And that's what I tell people all the time, these victims' families. I said, listen, you don't have those parameters. You, as your advocate for your loved one, you can press it. And we've met these people. You've met these people, Paula Fielder. I mean, other people at victims' family, Drew Kesse. I mean, and if they have so your victims' families, you can be empowered to do this. Don't wait. If the police are, obviously respect the police's procedures and like that, but go do it. Go find stuff.
Bum rush them at an event. I mean, get the answer.
That's perfect.
I agree.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, listen, we're praying for your book sales. I'm sure it's going to be fine.
There's a link below that you can just click on and you can get Cheryl's book, and you need to read it. And we would love to hear your thoughts about it, because I think she did a fantastic job. Her first book, it's a great investigation. It's fascinating to hear the words of a serial killer, but also a father, and the way that you handled him, Cheryl. I think that's the heart of it. And hearing her voice throughout was what kept me so engaged. So
did you do it on tape too? Are you doing the book on tape?
No, they did it, but I didn't read it. They said it would probably take too long.
Well,
hey, you're a soundbite machine. I don't care what anybody says. I just produced you with something.
But I appreciate y'all. And I just, I'm so grateful just to be able to talk about the book. And like you said, hopefully we'll get some feedback and it'll be positive.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
fantastic.
Great. We loved it. And thank you, Cheryl, for everything. You're an amazing spirit and person, and funnier than anyone I've met in a long time.
We had a good time.
Yes.
Oh, yes, we did. When we will have more.
You give crime and crime investigation a whole poetry, lightness, and ease.
Oh, thank you very much. I can't wait to hang out next week in Vegas.
All righty.
Insurance isn't one size fits all. That's why customers have enjoyed Progressive's Name Your Price tool for years now. With the Name Your Price tool, you tell them what you want to pay, and they'll show you options that fit your budget. So whether you're picking out your first policy or just looking for something that works better for you and your family, they make it easy to see your options. Visit Progressive.com. Find a rate that works for you with the Name Your Price tool. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.